What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleash, the weekly panel discussion show. And of course, we decided we're going to flip things. We've got an extra panelist this week, so I really will be playing host. I'll try to keep the commentary down to a minimum, but no promises. You know how I get. So let's go ahead and introduce our two special guests. First, you've seen him here plenty of times. He is the founder of Mixed Combat Radio, my good friend, Matt, the Hipster Hunter. Matt, how you doing today, my man?
I'm doing good. It's a Monday on recording, and obviously this comes out tomorrow on Tuesday. You made me stop watching the Jadakiss versus Fab battle, so that's how much you mean to me, Ant. That I stopped watching that hip hop battle, and I'm here.
Special.
You should, because that's.
And we'll talk about the battle later.
Absolutely. Yeah, and obviously I haven't been on for a while, so it's good to see Ben and Jay again. Been a while.
And we've both been kind of slacking on our hip hop show, so we gotta get back at it. So we got some cannon fodder for that. All right, so now we're gonna introduce a gentleman who has been on the show for the first time. Not the first time I've collaborated with him, but happy to have him on the Walkout Network. Mr. Dave Baker, right there. You've seen his work on FanSided MMA, also on the MMA Power Hour. Dave, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good, doing great. Trying to duck all things COVID for as long as I can out here, my man. We just trying to be as productive as possible, but it is good to be here. Great to be here with you guys.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, got to duck those coronaviruses out there trying to get us for what we got. And of course, let's go on to introduce the jack of all trades who's mastered them all, the senior editor of Sherdog.com, Mr. Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on, brother?
I'm doing well. I just feel bad for Dave, who kind of lives in Texas's attic, aka Oklahoma, and has got to deal with like the filth that we're sending upstairs, because we've got no control over this shit.
Keep it away.
Yeah.
Oh, LA County ain't far behind, so whatever. And now let's go ahead and introduce the man who anchors this panel every week. He's got all the stats, all the numbers, all the figures, all the facts. Mr. Jay Petrie, also of Sherdog.com. Jay, good day to you, sir. What's going on?
Hey, fellas. I'm looking forward to this. I think we're going to have a lot of fun 5-wide. Whatever we do, we have to let Ant do his rant. Don't get stuck in the hosting niche. We got to get you out of here too. So I'll start with my little niche. So 5 is the stat of the week. Got to get in frame here. 5 is the stat of the week. So each of the last 5 UFC main events, the UFC Apex, which has the small cage, have all gone the distance. This is all despite how conventional wisdom and previous information has said smaller cages lead to finishes. Each of these last 5 main events have gone the distance, which is the first time in almost 10 years that 5 straight events have ended with decisions. So, hey, my small cage.
Yeah, definitely strange. I mean, looking back at the Curtis Blades and Volkov fight, I don't think anybody predicted that would go to decision in such a small space. But if you took a good 30 seconds of the main event between Dustin Poirier and Dan Hooker Saturday, you would be very surprised to know that went to a decision, as the two did everything possible to take years off of one another's lives. It was an incredible fight. Definitely a candidate for fight of the year, in my opinion. But now we've got Dustin Poirier, who has now reinserted himself in the title picture. His last performance saw him dropping a submission to Khabib Nurmagomedov at UFC 242. So what do we do with Dustin Poirier now that he has reestablished himself as a title contender here, gentlemen? I will begin with my man, Dave.
So if I'm speaking from the selfish side of things, he and one Mr. Kukui, if they want to go ahead and sit out, play things safe, not trip on any cords, play it as safe as you possibly could until the end of 2020 and just rendezvous at the beginning of 2021. I don't think anybody on this panel, let alone anyone that likes mixed martial arts, would really be opposed to that. I get that the schedules are a little bit iffy and definitely don't coincide perfectly. With Ferguson having his fight back in April, he's kind of got a head start if you're going to compare the two's like healing time. But like I said, go ahead and have him sit out the rest of the year. There isn't really a road for either guy from my vantage point right now that makes more sense than each other. But that's just the way I see it.
Not a bad one. Anybody else want to jump on that grenade? Dustin Poirier takes on Tony Ferguson next.
I actually think this is kind of a perfect timetable for it because Ferguson was so broken. Like he did his whole he danced the jig in the hotel room with his IV bag. He's dragging that thing along. Oh yeah, I'm fine, guys. Hold on, let me check to make sure I didn't
have
pull
an
the thing
IV
out.
bag. So
yeah, like so this actually might work out really well because Poirier did say, I'm probably going to fight to the end of the year. I mean, this was the post-fight interview when he was all busted up because he took about 150 shots from Dan Hooker. But he's like, yeah, give me a few minutes. So I think that Dave, you're right. I think that has to be the fight because who else is there? Do we really want to talk about Conor? He's retired by all metrics, so we're good with that. But I think that more than any person in the roster, and I want you guys to agree or disagree here. More than any person on the roster, does Poirier want Gaethje to beat Khabib twice?
Yeah,
certainly.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, wouldn't everybody though?
Well,
except Ferguson, not Ferguson,
not Tony.
Well, not Ferguson, but not Ferguson. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, but wouldn't everybody, rather see that in that division, Conor included, as much as he's campaigning to fight Khabib. Matt, I know you were chomping at the bit to say something. The floor is yours.
I know that most people aren't fans of the idea of a tune-up, but maybe a tune-up is probably the best way to go about, and at least in the MMA, UFC perspective of a tune-up. A Paul Fellowship, I think, would make a lot of sense as well. Be a fun matchup, good main event. The two guys that have never fought before. Everyone else is kind of a rematch. It's Gaethje, it's Conor McGregor. Those are rematches. Tony Ferguson, I think, is a good matchup in theory, but I don't like the idea of Tony Ferguson coming off that loss heading into a fight with Dustin Poirier. That just doesn't sit right with me. If anyone deserves a tune-up, it's Tony Ferguson. He deserves to fight someone towards the top 15 instead of the top 10, top 5 of the division right now. I would go towards that. If not, a Justin Gaethje rematch. Go straight for a title fight or an interim title fight right now. We still know what Khabib is going to do next. We don't know what Conor's going to do next. So that leaves the division a little bit open right now to where Dustin can get another pseudo title fight again. So he could do that as well.
The Bronx is asking for it.
Wouldn't hate that fight.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad at that. I mean, and once again, we've had this conversation so many times. The lightweight division is so stacked. It's got so many interesting names and so many unique style matchups that you can just mix any of these guys up, pull some names out of a hat, and you're going to have a good time. Like, I mean, granted, he dropped his last one, but would anybody be mad to see Dustin Poirier versus Kevin Lee? No, sounds like a great time to me as well. I wouldn't. I mean, there's so many. I honestly wouldn't mind to see a Conor and Dustin rematch at 155 as well. There's so many different things you can do to make us happy, just as bloodthirsty savages.
Get a little Charles Oliveira in there too.
Man, New Bronx is
he's the wild card because we don't know what he's going to do. But somebody suggested this to me, and I thought it was a little crazy, but I had to stop and think about it. Poirier, if you want to give him that tune-up fight, Donald Cerrone, who is a top 11 guy right now.
So mean.
Poor Cerrone. I
mean, to Cerrone, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it does make sense for a tune-up fight. It's just we're getting to a very unfortunate place for someone like Cowboy Cerrone, who he'll take it. He'll take it.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, he'll take it. So I mean, you can pair him up with a lion or something, and he'll be more than happy to jump in there on 3 hours notice. Yeah, whatever. I mean, but once again, the lightweight division is just that stacked that so many cool things can happen. So I know a little bit off script, but what do you do next with Dan Hooker? I actually would put Dan Hooker against Tony Ferguson. That's the matchup that I would like to see there.
You guys are just so mean with these matchups. Maybe because I come from more of a boxing perspective, so like people are way more softer with matchups and matchmaking overall. But Dan Hooker's been brutalized in 2 of his last 4 or 5 fights. He's been hurt significantly in those fights, and I don't think he's really improved drastically from any of these losses, or at least from the Edson Barboza loss. I didn't see drastic improvements from that loss. It's still the same Dan Hooker. So I would like more of a backward step for him, to be quite honest. And Tony Ferguson is still a top 5, top 3 guy in the division. And even a guy coming off that loss can still beat up a Dan Hooker because it's Tony Ferguson. So I would lean more towards a tune-up again for Dan Hooker. I think some of these guys have been, especially the guys that have been in wars like this, they deserve a softer touch than going right back in there with the meat grinder, because that's how guys end up like a Shogun Hua, where they're
Shogun's a top 10 light heavyweight. Where'd that come from?
okay. That's I mean, Shogun was past his prime by what, 32, 33 years old?
Yeah.
You know, like I don't want Dustin Poirier to end up like that. I don't want Dan Hooker to end up like that.
All right, well, how about this, Matt? How about Dan Hooker versus Gregor Gillespie?
Ooh, love that. Makes perfect sense to me.
Oh, I have Matt's approval. So
yeah, Gregor needs like another look, so to speak, since that Kevin Lee loss.
And that's too much of a step back for him. Give him Kevin Lee. They're both coming off losses, and they're both top 10 guys.
I like the Joe Silva losers fight losers thing and the winners fight winners. I always have it.
Well, now we know that Joe Silva thought everybody was losers. That's what we learned last week.
Let's do it.
All right, gentlemen. So let's go ahead and move it along, but we'll keep on the subject of Mr. Dustin Poirier. Swing and miss. He is the right choice for the UFC's first Forrest Griffin Community Award. Man, I love that it's named after Forrest Griffin. So who's going to jump on that? Who's swinging or missing on that one?
That's the second best outcome. The first best outcome would have just been to name it the Dustin Poirier Award while he was still an active fighter.
I'm thinking, why wasn't just the Dustin Poirier Award?
Okay.
Why did Forrest Griffin?
I just think he's a cool personality. I don't know, but is Forrest Griffin, is he known for a lot of community work? If so, I'm not aware of this.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, given the general sentiment, though, I do love this for the UFC, though, especially like as a football traditionalist. I know all well, like the level to be called the Walter Payton Man of the Year, like to wear that like on your badge. I obviously don't know if they'll parlay the UFC as far as copying a badge that you put on shorts or anything like that, but it's a distinction to be taken seriously and one to be worn with pride, and one I think Dustin Poirier will wear on his sleeve, and something that I'm all in for. It's and inspiring and as incredible as his foundation's been. I think the guy to kind of bear that flag first, I mean, who better than Dustin Poirier?
Yeah, I mean, who else could you think of? That the only other name that pops up off the top of my head will be Derek Lewis, just because of what him actually physically saving lives during Houston's floods about a year and a half ago, something like that. Any other names that come to mind, gentlemen?
I got one, but you're not going to like it, and I don't agree with it, but I'm going to say it anyway. John Jones, because he has done a surprising amount of charity work the last year or so, donating tens of thousands of dollars to homeless shelters for coats and clothing. But then you got the rest of John Jones. So we're talking about his community work that wasn't court mandated, right? I'm talking about I didn't want to get into that because that's he's got like 40 hours chalked up there. He's good to go.
40 hours?
Dude, he gets a little slap on the wrist. It's crazy.
Had the same guy sign for all of them in like 2 days span. 40 hours.
Just throwing out a cigarette in my car.
With that 84-inch reach, when he's got the stick with a little nail on it, he can get some trash off the side of the highway really quick.
Oh, and just hanging off the overpass. All right. So let's move on. I'll move on from here. Now, of course, heading into fight week, the story of the event was not the mega fight that we saw between Poirier and Dan Hooker, the anticipation for that. It was all about one Mike Perry, who defeated Mickey Gall by TKO in the co-main event. Now,
decision.
So much to get into. Ben, the floor is yours. Just break it down, man. What were you
on this show? About? On this show this time last week, when we talked about what we were most looking forward to from the UFC Vegas 4 card, and I, with as straight a face as I could make, said I was looking forward to the co-main event between Mike Perry and Mickey Gall, and I was expecting him to come out with a newly diversified skill set that would really validate his choice of training and cornering environments. You gentlemen remember that.
Oh yeah.
I am here 7 days later, and I feel so fucking stupid because guess what? Not only did he win, he showcased a more diverse offensive skill set than he has done at any point in his UFC run. When, it was like those old Folgers commercials. Hi, we're at the UFC Apex. We have replaced the fine Mike Perry they usually serve with 2006 Matt Hughes. Let's see if they notice the difference. Since when has he done a top control special on some dude? Just taking him down and like working a patient positional game and pelting him with punches. I mean, granted, it was against Mickey Gall, but that was just the wildest thing ever and the last thing I expected.
Yeah, you would think of, if anything, that fight should. I mean, granted, Perry did win by knockout and was started with a sequence on the feet, but the level of control that he showed on the ground in transitions and everything was just like, this was not Mike Perry. And then on top of that, like, Mickey Gall, looked like a much better stand-up fighter than I can ever remember him. Remember seeing him being. Like, he rolled out of shots. Like, granted, he still got clipped quite a lot. He's still a guy who probably shouldn't be on the UFC level right now. But he looked greatly improved on the feet. Like, that was a much higher skill fight than I anticipated. It was much higher skill than it should have been. I went on record on, I don't know, I guessed it on somebody's show or something, or I commented something. I don't know. They said this was the lowest skill co-main event that I could ever recall. And there was, like a jackass, wrong.
Like, were you wrong though?
It was a much higher skill fight than it should have been.
Here's the deal:
they both look a lot better than we've seen them in previous outings.
I think that's generally because both guys are not good, and I think Mickey Gall is a guy that obviously has fame for beating up CM Punk, and like that's nothing. Stage Northcutt, kind of nothing. He's lost every other major fight he's been in. Mike Perry is someone that has always had a very limited striking skill set. He's never been a good striker, I would say. He's a guy that's throw bombs, like, let me bang, bro. Like, he's one of those guys, he's Julian Lane through and through. But, can he cut off the cage? No. Can he, duck under a shot? No. Can he use feints? No. He still can't do it. He can use a jab? Never. So I think part of this is that both guys have created a weird fan base / following in the MMA industry without being talented at all. And this fight could have been on Bellator, could have been Titan FC, could have been at Bodog back in 2004. Like, it doesn't matter. Like this fight could have been on so many different promotions, and it would have been the same fight. Like, this is not a UFC quality fight at all, in my opinion. I think there was fights lower than this that were far higher quality than this. Far higher quality.
No, I'm not saying that it was the absolute greatest, showing of skill ever like that. And it certainly was not the highest skill showcase on the card at all. Not by a long shot. However, it was a much higher skill than I expected to see. Well, you can't, even if you pair subpar competition versus subpar competition, that subpar competition is not going to start doing high level things. That's just not going to happen.
Really high level things, in my opinion. I mean, what was really high level?
Higher level than what it should have been.
It was higher level than what it should have been, but it was not high level. That's the difference.
And that's where I agree and disagree in here, because the expectations for this fight were basement level. They were, well, we know what Mike Perry is going to do. He's going to do, because I've equated to him to be like a Tank Abbott. He's just going to walk in there and smash your face in. And Mickey Gall's going to maybe try and roll for a knee bar if he can or whatever, and then he's going to try and hop on your back and choke you out. Like, not a one-dimensional grappler, but kind of a one-dimensional grappler. But at the same time, Mickey Gall landed more significant strikes in this fight than in his entire previous UFC career in one fight. But it was against Mike Perry, who just stood there and ate them like, they were sandwiches. I broke character this week. And I wrote an op-ed about this fight because of the what happened leading up to it, media day, and that I'm not going to have coaches and all that stuff, because it just felt wrong. It didn't feel good to see all this happen. It didn't feel good to hear what he was saying. And his demeanor and his approach to the fight, it just didn't feel like this is fight week. You have to fight somebody who wants to choke your neck and, do whatever he's going to do to you, and you're approaching it like this, and he got the win, but it doesn't validate the decisions that I strongly disagreed with. with any possible respect that may be due to make it go, let's see if his strategy works out against, a fighter who should be fighting in the UFC. But the cherry on top, if there is one, is that Mike Perrin may not have been cornerless because of bravado or I don't need these coaches, but rather that he couldn't afford one because he's massively in debt. So that is pinnacle Florida man, if you have anything there.
You know what? I'm glad you mentioned that because I definitely wanted to make note of that. His rant after the fight about making some arrangement with the IRS was stunning on multiple levels.
Diazian.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. That was an exercise in what not to do as an adult. I'll just put it that way.
He made more money than Dan Hooker. Like he made $180,000 plus Reebok, $12 or whatever, and a Sizzler coupon they give him. But he made almost $200,000 for this fight. So that is just, again, Florida man. How do you make $200,000 of the night and be extravagantly in debt? I don't know his situation, but just bad life decisions have led us all to this point. So here we are. Welcome to the Perry Show.
I mean, hey, you give him that money, he's going to want to spend it. He wants to wild out and ball out of control. So
Gosh.
I can't believe I heard
he's going to take his 4-month-old girlfriend out to the Sizzler. I don't know what restaurants.
Chuck E. Cheese is bankrupt now, man.
Yeah, Chuck E. Cheese is bankrupt, and all the restaurants are getting shut down again. So
how about Brown Round? Is that still around?
Oh no, he'll just order off a Grubhub or something.
Dave and Buster's, maybe.
If he ends up in Bellator.
Yeah.
That's a sponsorship right there.
Perfect for Bellator, by the way.
All right, fellas. Before we go desperately off the rails here, let's move on to our next conversation topic. So we've had the UFC broadcasts have taken note of some big money bets. Of course, a couple of weeks back, it was that $1 million bet that was placed on Amanda Nunes. The only time I've ever felt like I actively cheered against her just because I wanted that guy to lose all of his money. But someone put $37,000 on Kay Hansen. Fellas, what do we make of these big ticket bets going on in the sport on otherwise kind of low key cards?
I like it. It's their money. It's adds interest, and a lot of people bet because it adds interest and it adds stakes for them. Once they kind of get into it, they don't feel as though they're fully enjoying the sport unless they're putting at least a small amount of money on it. I get a little piece of that vicariously when I hear about these big money bets. And if any of them doesn't pan out, then I get to, point and laugh at them and talk about it on the internet the next week. And I'm not the one who lost the money. So I love it.
Some of us can understand a gamble and the beauties and the horrors that can take place on both sides in any given result. I am no longer a gambling man, and I will not go into details as to why, but I lost, a small bet on a different MMA show earlier this year that drastically changed my appearance. What I'm saying is people bet because they're confident. People bet because they want to act like, they're the smartest guy around in the water cooler, whether it is beyond any type of want to gain capital or make money or make profit. A lot of people just want to prove that they're right. And with the tea leaves changing state by state, we're getting more and more people betting. Also, on top of that, no other sports really being active right now. You would have to imagine that we would see, you couldn't be that surprised, A, that a $1 million figure came in on Amanda, or B, that UFC Fight Pass got their own show with the little tan guy
Johnny
on the Contender Series. These are all things that were just going to be a part of the process when gambling became popularized, and here we are today.
I'm actually surprised a lot of this didn't happen sooner.
Yeah.
Like sports books are a huge thing and have been as long as I can remember. So yeah, that all this money enters the world of mixed martial arts, and now we're seeing it on the fan side as far as these high level bets.
And it's been part of forum culture forever, where somebody on Fight Night is, here's my slip, stick around in the thread, make fun of me if I lose, drinks on me if I win. So I'm surprised as well.
the original iteration of Sherdog Radio had Luca Fury. It was his whole purpose was to give gambling tips, and that was his whole thing. So it's been part of our culture as fight fans, but to see it enter with these dollar figures in MMA is kind of an interesting thing. Where it came from.
It really is, but I think part of it is a displaced betting amount from other places that would have been placed on NBA games or on big boxing matches or on baseball and football and so and so and so and so, because nothing's going on. This money, people are the Fred Flintstones of the world. People are wanting to put their money down on anything, anywhere they can. So I mean, I think got lost in the shuffle. I'm pretty sure. I think it was Jed Goodman that posted this. Could have been Nick Kalikas. The $200,000 came in on Hooker. Like, that's $200,000 in one bet came in on Dan Hooker. Need I remind us, the biggest MMA bet that had ever happened was Amanda Nunes. That $1 million bet, we hadn't seen $1 million bet in MMA. We'd seen it with Conor and Floyd. I think they one cracked that line. But there's something that bothers me. Not quite enough to rant for a while about it, but it just ground my gears. This guy bet $37,000 on this fight. For Kay Hansen making her UFC debut, she won a decision. She won by armbar, triangle armbar, really. It was a good fight, but a UFC debut, low salary. She took home $28,000, not counting a post-fight bonus. So this guy throwing money down on the fight almost made more money betting on the fighter than the fighter took home at the end of the night. So that just fundamentally just had that screeching halt. But I could springboard into fighter pay and all that, but I'll spare you with that. Yeah, I mean, it's their money, so have fun with it, boys.
Yeah. I mean, I call me a hater. I just like to actively root against people when they have these big bets. So actually, I was kind of turned off to betting on combat sports altogether. This was Brock Lesnar versus Shane Carwin, and I bet one of my coworkers $10 that Shane Carwin was going to win by knockout. And I was so close to that $10, that $10 gone. So I want my $10. So until I get my $10 back, I can't put no money on fights, man.
And I got you beat. I lost $100 on Anderson Silva versus Chris Weidman 2.
Ooh,
that was sad.
I lost hair and half of my beard on a Patriots game, so I've got you there.
Well, I lost my beard in a few years ago because of a fight bet. So I guess I didn't quite learn my lesson.
The situation I was alluding to was in March when Johnny Walker and Nikita Krylov went to decision. I had bet my colleagues that my hair, that there was no way it would go to the scorecards, and so they went to the scorecards, and then I became Larry Davidson.
I saw that video, by the way. It was a legendary video.
It was nice. It was amazing.
Nobody can tell me that I'm not a man of my word ever again.
Nope.
You're solid, man. You've proven yourself.
Yep.
All right, gentlemen.
God, that fight shouldn't. I don't know how that fight went the distance. Just no. Okay, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's. I'm still confused about that one. All right, so let's move on here to the best titled segment in all of media history, and that is I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. That is where we get to share a story that we think deserves a little bit more attention, whether surprise us on the pre-fight covers, the fight themselves, the fights afterward, or anything related to the world of combat sports. So we'll begin with the homie Dave. What is your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Given the nature of how the world has kind of stopped news-wise and sports-wise in a lot of efforts and regards, mine both kind of come from the card, and I don't know how you can get more surprising and kind of more shocked or have any bigger moment of being shell-shocked than when Bruce Buffer's grill spat out 30-27 in favor of Brendan Allen against Kyle Dawkins. The adjectives really are difficult to find. However, we've been here a million times and we've seen it before, and we know it isn't going to improve because it has had so much time to improve. and yet continuously doesn't, that being the inconsistency in judging. That, and I guess, the Arosa submission was wildly surprising, even though it seemed like once he had it locked in and dragging him to the mat, that it looked like it was about as a done deal. Really surprising win there, and a really surprising lack of, I don't know what to call it, on the part of the judges.
Dave Hagen.
All right, Matt, what is your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcon moment this week?
It's going to be sort of like a future news story because this is an event a few weeks out. It's the Darren Till, Robert Whitaker event, obviously in the UAE and Abu Dhabi. That event obviously is being, in essence, co-managed by MTK Global right now because Darren Till is managed by MTK Global. And if those in the MMA community have not maybe been aware of what's been going on in the boxing community, Daniel Kinahan, the former founder of MTK Global, which was originally called MGM Marbella, is the leader of the Kinahan cartel in Ireland. He's directly connected to 18 murders. He's directly connected or responsible for the Irish boxing scene being completely destroyed. Right now, today, as we record, the Irish Parliament announced that they're going to sort of file charges against Daniel Kinahan. The Gardaí is the name of their sort of FBI equivalent for our U.S. listeners. They will be looking to arrest Daniel Kinahan, looking for extradition because he lives in the UAE. And the UAE has also been looking to kick him out of Abu Dhabi and Dubai and all that because he has been an issue, so to speak. Bahrain, he's had a deal with Bahrain, and that's sort of gone south. And he had deals with obviously Tyson Fury and Bob Arum, and they were making an Anthony Joshua fight. Those have all gone south. But Darren Till, who's main eventing that UFC card, is managed and advised by Daniel Kinahan specifically. And he has visited Daniel Kinahan on multiple occasions. I'm not surprised that we have seen little to no MMA coverage on that subject. I hope to God by the time we get closer to that event, we do see more coverage on the bigger websites because that's an important issue. I mean, I feel like we as a collective community have let go the idea of promoters working with authoritarian regimes, but let's maybe draw the line on cartel leaders that are connected to over a dozen murders. I feel like there's some line we need to draw in terms of who is allowed into our community and into our industry. I think Daniel Kinahan should be ostracized from this community. Absolutely. So hope to see that story more told, so to speak, on sites moving forward.
If the continued relationship between the UFC and Ramzan Kadyrov is any indication, the UFC will be selling No to Drugs shirts pretty soon. So, Jay, what is your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
So I'm going to abandon the UFC for a minute because I know that there's so many surprising moments, and I'm going to talk about my pals, my best buddies, one championship. But there's a twist to it. Before you recoil in terror and think I'm going to go launch on some tangent, don't worry, boys. So one championship announced this week that the big events are going to start coming back effective July 31st. The first event is called No Surrender, because I guess we're no retreat, no surrender style. So one championship had a couple little events in China, a couple fighters. One was headlined by a 1-0 guy against an 8-10 guy. So clearly the top of the top, the best of the best talent. But it was more of a proof of concept to see if they could run these events in these Asian countries and not have coronavirus issues. So one championship is coming back with the big flagship event, a couple Muay Thai and kickboxing matches, a lot of Thai fighters. And this might be a little surprising to me. No, not X-Wing versus TIE Fighters, Ben Duffy. That travel in Singapore is still heavily restricted. To go to another country from one of those countries, you have to fill out a whole medical survey about what you've done, where you've been, if you've been in contact, all these different information. It is a lot of hoops to jump through to go through another country, and this will be in Thailand. Meanwhile, and here's the most surprising part, Bellator. You guys know Bellator, consensus number 2 MMA organization in the world, hasn't made, as of today that I can think of, any public plans of any kind for any upcoming events, other than ones that may happen in Milan, Italy in October, like a Bellator kickboxing thing. So Scott Coker said the plan was to come back in July, but it's July in a couple days. So it's about time to start announcing that you're going to start coming back real soon. So, and Bellator is based in California. California just approves combat sports events. So what's the holdup? How did one championship beat Bellator back? So there is my surprising moment of this week.
You know, they actually, and they did announce that they were, it may not have been an official announcement, but there were headlines saying that they were looking to stage some events on Viacom property in Studio City, California. And those plans didn't, I guess, kind of fizzled out. But now as like COVID-19 cases are increasing in Los Angeles County, you know, I would be very surprised if that plan follows through, especially if we still haven't heard anything other than those rumors. So, Ben, what is your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
There were plenty. This was a wild weekend of fights in a good way. Not, you know, a complete shit show, just a little bit of shit show on the side. Already talked about Mike Perry and how I was ironic last week and then unironically surprised by the reality. But let's talk about Tanner Boser for just a second. Is he the only UFC fighter who showed up post-COVID in visibly better physical condition?
Besides Gilbert Burns, yeah.
Yeah, he
John Vellante, yeah.
and looked, you know, John Vellante just kind of, you know, reinventing himself, or he's not yet evolved into his final form.
Is he going to give birth to
it? Spreading his wings.
Yeah, I kid. I love John Vellante.
Dude, he'll say world
but Boser looked great. Again, the jury is still out on Felipe Lin's quality. Certainly, he's not lived up to what was expected as what is turning out to be one of the more undeserving millionaires in MMA history. But Boser looked great. The finish is one of my favorite kinds of finish that we ever see in mixed martial arts. We don't see it very often, where he dropped him. I mean, Linz was going down either way, but he was not satisfied with dropping him. He nailed him with 3 more laser strikes to the head on the way down. It is hard. I mean, it's hard enough for a striker to hit a head that's moving laterally like multiple times cleanly, but a vertically moving target that's essentially moving away from you at the same time that it's moving down, that's hard. I mean, there have been a few times. It harks back to one of my favorite knockouts ever, which is all the way back in '99. That's you know, Igor Vovchanchin knocking out Francisco Bueno 3 times on the way to the canvas. So great look for him. Unbelievable that, you know, on such a crowded medal podium for post-fight bonuses, you know, he didn't end up getting an official one. Hopefully they gave him a bag of loonies, you know, on his way out of the venue. But I have no idea what his ceiling is. But just physically turning from just another heavyweight into a pretty fit-looking 235 or 240 guy, most of the best heavyweights in history are relatively fit-looking 235, 240 guys. And yes, I'm including Fedor and Kane in that. It's a good place to be physically. And in a heavyweight division where basically anybody is 2 good wins away from the top 10, and anybody who hasn't had a title shot already is probably 4 good wins away from a title shot, he doesn't have to do much. And he grew back his mullet. All in all, like, our champion of the weekend is Mr. Tanner Boser. Hail Canada.
Rock and roll,
Canada,
baby.
Home to Brock Lesnar. All right, fellas. So let's
except when he needs health care.
Yeah. We eats too much beef jerky. All right, so let's move on here to discuss one John Jones, who has said that he has decided that he's okay with sitting out from UFC competition, no matter how long it takes. He said even for years, he's all right with this. So we've seen this game of chicken play out over the last few weeks or so. Who do you think blinks first, Jones or the UFC?
I am praying to God it is not Jones. And I'm not a John Jones fan at all, but this is something that happens quite often in combat sports, where fighters take the 2 to 3 years to wait out their promotional deal or management deal that doesn't suit them. It happens. Andre Ward did it. Mikey Garcia did it. Like, people have done it. Okay. And John Jones is perhaps a top 3 or 4 draw in combat sports right now, period, full stop. Across all combat sports. He is a top 4 or top 3 draw. That's just what he is. So he should be sitting out. If he's not getting paid guaranteed $5 to $10 million every time he fights, disclosed purses, then he shouldn't be fighting. Like, that's just how it should be. And I've seen a lot more awareness from the MMA top guys sort of understanding that other side of it in the combat sports world. When they look at the boxing pay-per-view market and how certain guys don't do the numbers they do, but get paid 3, 4, 5 times what they do. And finally, they seem to be wising up. Finally. So hopefully John Jones says, I can sit out. I'm, 32, 33 years old. He's still pretty young. He's still arguably the greatest of all time, and he's still the greatest light heavyweight right now on the face of the earth. And he can still move up to heavyweight and possibly be the greatest up there too. So yeah, sit out 2 years, sit out 3 years. You can wait. You're going to make so much more money doing that than fighting out the next 3 or 4 or 5 fights and finishing your career making this amount of money. Just wait it out.
Anybody want to jump on the opposite side of the fence? Does Jones blink first?
Shuffy, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave, please.
I think that a lot of what was just said is incredibly well thought out and factual. However, if I had to make a prediction just based off of what I think is going to happen purely, I do think Jones blinks first at the end of the day, even if it is fully and 100% within Jones's right to sit out and get paid like apropos a top 3, top 4 combat sports draw like he is. And, you know, at the end of the day, I'm not going to put on my Dana White cap and go like, John's made plenty of money and, you know, everything else that comes with that. But I will say that even though it is not, you know, all too eyebrow raising, it is undeniable that John is presumably better off in that regard than anybody else in his division would be. And so if he has to vacate the seat that he's on, he's going to be the guy that can wield the most power and or have the most hypothetical leverage or what have you, if that's the stance he chooses to take. More so than anybody in his division, maybe more so than anybody in the sport not named Conor McGregor. Unfortunately, though, I mean, the UFC has shown us time and time again, it waits for no man. They don't normally negotiate on those grounds or on those set terms, and especially not the ones Jones is trying to dictate. So while I don't blame John and would not at all, if he were to go that route, I do think if I had to make a prediction, I think Jones is either going to blink first or this stalemate's going to continue.
And it really worries me as from a selfish perspective, from a fight fan perspective, not a John Jones and fighters should be paid more money. Because could you imagine if we lose the end of John Jones's prime years? He's 32. He turns 33 next month, I believe. That we could lose a large and very important chunk of his opportunity. Not his career, guys. His opportunity. He could lose a large piece of that because of a pay dispute. And that, I mean, I think to Eddie Alvarez, where he had the dispute between Bellator and the UFC coming over, and he lost a year or so of his fighting, end of his prime. I think he was 33 or 34 about when that happened. That fighters can't afford to lose this time. And it almost is that phrase almost has two meanings, because they can't afford to lose this time because they're not going to be in that shape as they get older, and because of the money that they should be making. God, I hope this is resolved sooner than later, but John Jones doesn't need the UFC as much as the UFC needs John Jones. Hunter, you're right on the money. He is a top combat sports draw. The end of it. And the UFC is balking at paying the man whatever amount he's asking for. I can't imagine a sum of money he's asking for that the UFC would pay and go in the red because of that, because of what John Jones does fight to fight. I mean, they may not make as big of a cut as before, but the UFC is so used to an 84% revenue cut that the fear of not having that is crushing to them, which is why is right that they don't wait for anybody. The UFC will say, fine, Randy Couture, jog on, Jens Pulver. We don't care about any of you guys. Go ahead, have fun. I mean, Chet Congo's the winningest heavyweight in Bellator history. Think about that. Chet Congo, UFC heavyweight, went to Bellator because they weren't offered enough contract, and he went to Bellator. Now he's the best or longest whatever heavyweight that they've ever had. So yeah, God, this needs to end. UFC needs to realize, okay, this is John Jones we're talking about, and then we could be moving on. John Jones fight anybody he wants now.
You know, I'm glad you brought up Eddie Alvarez's name in this, because he was very serious about digging his feet into the sand and staying put, staying planted. However, he couldn't afford to.
Right.
And I do very distinctly remember Eddie Alvarez talking about having to sell off a couple of investment properties he had to make sure that his bills and things were paid and his family was still set up in case he wasn't going to be fighting for the foreseeable future with the litigation in process. John Jones has the luxury of not just balking because he needs the money, as long as he's spending wisely. You know, if we are to believe what I think he went on Twitter to say that he made about $5 million a fight at a certain point. Yeah. Which sounds a lot of money, but not nearly the amount that he deserves, considering how many pay-per-views he sold, and the profile athlete that he is, of course. But if he were to have, you know, just say in his last 4 fights, Gustafson, Santos, Smith, and Reyes, if he were smart with that $20 million that he would have made since the end of 2018, then we're talking about a nice chunk of change that you can easily retire off of and take care of your family without any sort of real issues if you're smart about things. So he has that luxury. Now, as far as, but I think what becomes a problem here is going to be pride.
Yes.
Those with the exception of the Gustafson fight, I should just say his last 3 fights, 3 of the closest that he's had in his career, an otherwise very dominant career. 3 of the closest fights he's had, and then the Smith fight wasn't close. Let me scratch that. Santos and Reyes, his last 2 fights, 2 of the closest fights he's ever had, and people questioning the results of those, and the light heavyweight division actually having some talent rising up where we're starting to realize, okay, there might be some talent there. It might be a division that we can run with. So I think pride becomes the issue. Is John Jones, can he sit back and let a division go on without him there? You know, we saw him get a little antsy with Daniel Cormier taking the driver's seat in his mandated absence. Do you think John Jones, being the competitor that he is, being whatever you want to describe about his personality or whatever, can you see him sitting on the sidelines watching Dominic Reyes versus Thiago Santos for the belt that he never lost in the cage and not saying, the hell with this, I'm jumping in there?
Like GSP.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, he can. You know why? Because when you say, look at his last 4 fights, he made $5 million each, around $20 million, right? Someone's going to sit down and say, look, you could have made $20 million in one of those fights.
He should have made that much in one of those fights.
You know, like, honestly, like, somebody should be sitting him down. One of his managers should be sitting him down and going, hey, you made this much in this amount of fights. You could have made all of that in just one of those fights if you were actually getting what you deserve. So wait the 3 years out, wait out your contract, and then bid yourself. Go out to the free market. And like, go out and have Bellator and UFC and ONE and all these places bid for you. Why not?
I don't think anybody can afford him besides UFC, though.
I think if Bellator, which is owned by Viacom, could get a John Jones level pay-per-view draw, they will spend the money. Yes. Yeah. I absolutely think that.
The way one championship is burning through money and paying.
Hey, no. One championship has billions and billions of dollars and, you know, billions of fans. So they can get John Jones.
Yeah. So, you know what, Matt? I think it's too. We probably should have had you on the show earlier talking about some of this as it kicked off, simply because I remember very recently you getting into sort of a Twitter spat with John Jones management.
No.
About his pay. Yes, a guy looked just like you. He had like a V-neck on in the profile picture. It looked like he was holding a tripod or something. But yeah.
Was it Malky? Who was it?
I think it was Malky. It was Malky, and you were telling him like Jones isn't getting paid enough, and now months later we're seeing Jones, saying he's not getting paid enough. So, MMA managers, please do your job.
Hit me up. Okay, hit me up. Or John Jones, hit me up. I'll manage you, because obviously Malky doesn't know shit if he's thinking that you got paid right.
All right. So with that business proposition laid out on the table, it is time to move on to the speed bag, and you mofos will have 10 seconds apiece to answer these questions. So we're just going to keep it continuous. I'm going to shout your name. You just answer the question. I'm going to start off with my man Ben Duffy here. So, question number 1 for you. Would you rank Poirier versus Hooker above Emmett versus Burgos from last week as far as fight of the year goes? 10 seconds.
Yes, I would. Just barely. Stakes do matter. It was a higher stakes fight. And while it wasn't perfect, it did kind of fizzle out.
Oh, yes.
Jay's time is burning away.
I didn't hear my name mentioned. I heard a phone vibrating. Yeah, Poirier Hooker is number 2.
Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. But still not fight of the year. Shout out to the women.
All right, look at that time to spare. You know what, Davidson? Now you get the proper intro.
There we go. I would, as far as I'm concerned, it's number 2 for me. It slides right in front of that one, and probably right 2 above another fight, including the aforementioned Hangman from back in February.
All right. So I very good round, Matt and Dave. Ben, Jay, that really, really made me happy.
I kept it in at the very end, though.
That was perfect. All right, Jay. So I'm going to start with you this time. Your question says, what would you call Maurice's Green submission over John Vellante?
If we want to get on nuance, we can talk about things like maybe a scarf hold or something. I'll go with like a modified arm triangle. That'll do.
All right. Matt?
Belongs in Bellator.
All right.
That's where that submission belongs. Yes.
Okay. Dave?
Distracting. And by that, I mean continuously distracting me while it was unfolding from the weigh-in pictures, because that's all I could stare at.
Man.
An embarrassment that should never be repeated again in the octagon.
Maybe submission exhaustion then.
Let's see the Congo versus Jim Vellante. I want to see that.
All right. So now I will begin with you, Matt. Boz Rutan claimed this week that Conor should be on the MMA Mount Rushmore. Agree or disagree?
I really don't care about these discussions, but sure, whatever. He's one of the biggest stars of all time. Thanks for being a team player. Dave?
It just matters, what does one put on their perspective mount? Is it the best? Is it the greatest? Is Muhammad Ali the best, or is he the greatest? It all just depends on those parameters. He would be on mine.
Ben?
Definitely, if there's a small Mount Rushmore in the gift shop, he should be on that one.
Jay?
Man, I love Boss, but I couldn't disagree with him more. I have Boss over Conor on my Mount Rushmore, and I don't have Boss on that.
No.
All right, fellas. So now let me go ahead and change the clock, because I will give myself 30 seconds to answer all 3 questions. So the clock will start after I read the first question. So would I rank Poirier versus Hooker above Emmett versus Burgos from last week as far as fight of the year goes? Yes, I always favor the 5-rounders above 3-rounders. Excellent fight. Definitely number 2 for the year for me so far. Maurice's Green submission over John Vellante. It looked like an Ezekiel choke from bottom of side control, but scientifically that doesn't happen. So, and Boz Rutan claimed claiming that McGregor should be on the MMA Mount Rushmore. Like, yeah, I'm with Matt. I don't care. I just really don't care. Yeah, I mean,
can we just admit that John Volante quit on when he was in, was it half guard or side control? Like he just quit. Like he
tapped to hunger.
Not going anywhere for a while.
What was he hungry for? You have to cut weight. You have to cut weight.
Oh, he hungry. He was trying to get some wings at the hotel or something, and he like, I gotta hurry up and get back. All right. All right, fellas. So we got Invicta FC 40 coming up on Thursday. What today is Monday. When you're watching this, it's going to be Tuesday. So 2 days, Invicta FC 40 coming live from Kansas City on Fight Pass. So Emily Ducati and Juliana Lima are headlining. Are you guys watching?
No, there's boxing on that same time. Sorry.
Who is Top Rank?
Yes, unfortunately. Yes.
Well, it may be. The headline is probably going to fall out because the coronavirus. I mean, that's what happens.
That happens on every single card, so that's definitely possible. Yes, thank you, Jay, for that bad juju. Thank you.
If I do end up watching it, it's definitely going to be with the co-main event in mind, with Zappatella and Van Zant, no doubt about it.
Yeah, no. I mean, was that all you had on that one, Dave?
I'm just my trajectory of whatever level of excitement or what may have you is so far more geared towards that result than the main event.
Mm-hmm. I'm totally with you on that one. Zappatella, I'll just come out and say this. She is a better Kay Hansen, but she needs an atomweight division. Like, she's not even like borderline could fight at strawweight. You know, she's 4'3". But in terms of just that raw physicality, the wrestling, grappling ability, just the rabid Wolverine shit, like when she gets people on the floor, she's just very much like if you had like nesting dolls of like Aspen Ladd, Macy Barber, Kay Hansen, like Alicia Zappatella would be the smallest one in the middle. She's awesome.
Jay, are you doing play-by-play duties, or will there be play-by-play for this one?
I don't think so. It really depends if I want to. Basically, it's a 6-fight card. It's on a Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, so it should be like a 2.5 hour trip if every fight goes the distance. And Invicta cards historically, lately, most of the fights have gone the distance for better or worse. I mean, I was going to touch on Zapp and Van Zant because that's the fight of the night for me. I'll be covering it. I'll be here. I'll be around, I suppose. And I'm glad it's on Thursday, actually. I think that's kind of nice because it gives us Friday, Saturday, Sunday free from any combat sports outside of like Belarusian fighting championships and whatever M1's limping to the gates with, because that happens every weekend.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'll be watching it live, but it really just kind of depends on my household situation. Like, that's kind of dictating everything I do as far as fights and podcasts now, is whether this baby lets me. But like the past several weeks, I haven't watched the UFC live. So, maybe I'll sit down on a Thursday because I'll feel like, hey, this isn't cutting into weekend family time. Right. I can just watch this, and it'll be a 6-fight card in and out, and by the time it's over with, time to, give the kid a bath and, and act like I'm a halfway responsible adult. So this just might be the move. The only problem I have with this whole plan is that for some strange reason, UFC Fight Pass doesn't have an app on PlayStation 4. That really pisses me off. Because I don't feel like hooking up my laptop to my TV with the HDMI cable, and I don't want to sit in my podcasting chair right here, my little workstation, and sit back, because I don't want to do that. I want to sit on my couch on my TV. Like, nobody wants to deal with all that, man. Give me the damn app.
Swear, when I had a PS4, I felt that pain so bad, so bad.
You got an Xbox now?
Nothing now. It's video game free now.
Oh man. God, how do you
changes.
get through the pandemic without the video games, bro?
I didn't for a while. This was something I did like 3-4 weeks ago. It's time to make moves, bro. Like you said, we gotta get people to come get this work, right?
Man, I like this.
Ooh.
All right, there we go, man. You know what, Matt? You're bumped now. Davis is my new guy.
No, we're all guys, bro.
You know what? He's so nice and just Matt, you out. You out.
And I will slap you, Philly. Don't you dare. I will slap you, Philly.
That's cold, man. Why you gonna do me like that?
I know where you live. Don't you dare.
I know where you live. Shit.
Some respect on my name.
Pull up. All right, fellas. So, of course, Invicta is running on Thursday because Friday is July 4th. So we got a big holiday weekend coming up. No fights. What are we doing this weekend? So, how do you guys plan on celebrating? How you plan on spending time outside of the world of paid fisticuffs?
Barbecue and fireworks.
Really, that's the word. The word is outside. I mean, just think of, because I run play-by-play on Sherdog, and it's been the last 5 weeks, 5 Saturdays have been, you're here from 5 to 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and there you go. So it is going to be a nice reprieve because, fellas, okay, we're going to put on my little rain cloud for a second. We got to buckle up because starting July 11th, 8 weeks in a row have UFC cards on the weekend, and we have a Wednesday card. So we got a lot of punching ahead of us. But this week, man, I'm going to savor it. I'm going to sit outside, have a nice cigar, maybe a couple of the new Stella, whatever they're called, the blondes. Those are really good. Have a nice, relaxing, non-firework week because all the fireworks around me have been totally canceled. Say we don't want people around. So because fireworks will attend people like, a bug zapper draws in the flies. So people will show up and they're like, we don't want that.
Well, I don't want to hear no damn fireworks because I hear them every night. I feel like my neighbors spend a small fortune on fireworks because it's been live every night for at least about 3 months. I'm sick of this.
Yeah, it's 3 months. It's awful.
Yeah. I don't plan on I guess celebrating 4th of July. Like I never really celebrate 4th of July. Y'all know my politics, so y'all know how I get down. So you know I'm not going to be draped in a flag, and I'll probably. You know what? I'm gonna get me a Pan African flag. I'm gonna put one of those on or something.
You can burn an American flag on 4th of July too. You haven't thought about that?
Oh wow!
Wear a big old bright red hat and have a party
with a firework.
With the firework, yeah. I'm probably all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna crack open a couple beers, and if I don't fire up my grill, I'm gonna go to someone else that is firing up the grill. So I'm gonna pull up on you, Matt.
That's possible. Yeah, you can do that.
That's probably, yeah. Or if you don't, you come over my house. Whatever. We'll work this out, and then we'll settle our differences there. Davidson's still my guy, though. So Ben, you firing up the grill? I know you've been known to hit the grill and do some special things.
Oh well, This is Houston, Texas. So 9 months out of the year is grilling weather, and the other 3 are too hot. So I'm definitely going to grill. Probably won't be too much of a break from fight related stuff for me. Just a chance to catch up on things and write a few franchise articles that I wanted to. Beer, definitely. I'll have a Coors Light because Bud won't pay me nothing. And hell, I might even get on top of my wife.
There you go.
All right, fellas. Well, I don't think there's any better way to conclude the show than that.
No. Only I get to do that. You're all going to get on top of my wife?
This is perhaps the most morally reprehensible group of gentlemen that have been collected at one time. And with that,
Alexander Emelianenko is fighting in a couple weeks. Want to talk about that?
Oh wow!
When Jay says "Let's get weird," that's that. That's that.
Yeah,
right
I just don't give you any warning before getting weird.
Yeah, and you do it with a straight face. It's just masterful. You are a master at this. So, fellas, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Unleashed. Thank you to the homie Matt Hunter. Thank you to the homie Davidson Baker. And of course, Ben and Jay, as always, holding it down. So you can find their work on Sherdog.com. You can find Matt on Mixed Combat Radio. You can find Davidson at FanSided MMA Also at the MMA Power Hour, you can look through the magic of post-production to see our Twitter handles. So go ahead, follow, do all that stuff. And as far as the Walkout Network is concerned, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Now, of course, you know what you got to do. You must stay beautiful. You must stay positive. And throughout it all, you got to stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.